What wacky ducks will we encounter this time in Gold?
His best friend and the little sister of his mentor that he swore to look after is in the hands of a deadly hitman. Worst of all,
I remember when Gold actually meant
Guard
something. What happened?
is guilty. One of Phoenix's most
I used to
well-written character
encounter
flaws is that he
Fiendsmith,
has an
Snake Eye,
incredibly fucked up
Azamina,
idea
White
of what it
Forest
means to be a defense
bullshit.
attorney. His career choice
OP
came from
piles
a
all the
desire to
time.
protect those who had no voice of their own, and it's more or less a truth that Phoenix only chooses to defend people he knows are innocent. On paper, this goal seems noble, until you think about it for more than a few minutes. The thing is, guilty people need defense attorneys too. Everyone has the right to legal counsel. A defense attorney does not have to argue for full acquittal. Sometimes their job is to fight for a lighter sentence too. So Phoenix, being a defense attorney who more or less refuses to extend that courtesy to the guilty, well, that's actually a major flaw of his, and it's one I don't often see criticized. All that to say, he is going through it here. It shakes up his worldview, breaks him apart,
What the fuck
amplifies the trauma of the whole situation, and then,
happened?
to make matters worse, Miles shows back up and acts like nothing's changed since the last time they spoke.
Well, here we go. We finally got a Fiendsmith.
Talk about. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Franziska has her case. Because this is it. Matt on guard is guilty. Franziska knows he's guilty, and she's got all her ducks in a line. After watching her win record get shattered after 5 perfect years, after losing twice to the man who ruined not only her father, but her brother as well, Franziska sees this light.
Don't let anyone mislead you like you were nobody, cause you mean so much to me. Let them laugh at you. Let's see at the end of the day who's gonna be smiling.
Phoenix and Pearl tremble behind the defense's bench. And Franziska is nowhere to be found. Because right before the trial was set to start, the same hitman who took Maya
that's why.
put a bullet in Franziska's shoulder.
Did it my way, which is only on the highway. Fast and furious, the image I display, I get wasted for every time. I think it's systematic. Alright, this seems like a matchup we're very likely not going to win. My win streak might finally be over. It was fun while it lasted.
Because, let me be clear, this scene is not shown to us. We do not see Franziska get shot. All we get is other characters telling us of it, that she's in the hospital, that it happened right outside the courthouse, etc. For this reason, I'd like to give the play-by-play myself. I'd like to tell you why this scene makes me fully insane. It's mid-morning, sometime before court is set to start. Franziska is Franziska. Efficient, prepared, and above all, German. So she's probably arriving a good while before the trial in question. Miles, who has miraculously come back from the dead, is there with her. We don't know why he's there with her. When he initially revealed himself, it was to both her and Phoenix at once. The first thing he did to his sister, after she'd packed up her life in pursuit of him, after she'd dealt with his abandonment, was insult her and immediately start ignoring her to talk to Phoenix. Franziska, understandably, stormed off and away from him. Now, for some reason, they are standing beside each other once more on these courthouse steps. What were they talking about? Who knows? If I were to speculate, I'd say that Franziska had no chance of letting Miles get a word in edgewise. Were they arguing? Was he making some attempt to talk it out? We don't know what this conversation contains, or how it began, but we do know how it ends. Somewhere far off and unseen, Shelley the Killer takes aim, firing his pistol once with perfect precision into Franziska's right shoulder. By the hitman's own admission, this was a gift to Phoenix. Cover fire, he calls it. Here is this legendary prosecutor with only 2 losses under her belt, and it would be a shame if Phoenix were to have to go up against her again, so he takes her out. But despite his profession, he's a man with integrity. So, a fairly non-fatal wound. That, I'm sure, is all it was to him. The most logical place to cram a bullet to keep her out of court for a bit. To everyone else, though, to the
Yeah,
player,
we're dead.
to Miles, to Francisca, most of all, there was no crueler irony. Obviously, anyone who's played AA1 understands the storytelling choice was intentional, because Francisca cannot walk into a room without anyone and everyone seeing past her to what came before her. Francisca is not allowed to just be who she is. Her name falls after a comma.
I guess they want to wait for me to activate
Francisca.
my thingy from the graveyard.
All anyone can say about her, all anyone will say about her, is that she is Manfred von Karma's daughter. So she is domineering like him, and sharp-witted like him, and meticulous and rigid and fierce like him. Perhaps she is corrupt like him, and evil like him, and ruthless in her pursuit of perfection like him.
I'm fine with that
And
going back.
Even if all of that is simplifying the depth of her, what does it matter? Because now she has a bullet in her shoulder, like him. And when that bullet struck his right shoulder, he bellowed a scream so haunting, so chilling, so wrong, that Miles Edgeworth heard its timbre in his nightmares for 15 years straight. Miles is not a character you can separate from his trauma, his actual canonical PTSD. He avoids elevators, he blacks out during earthquakes, and he is a criminal lawyer who can't always stomach the sight of a gun despite this. I don't want to make this scene about him, because it shouldn't be. I just want to try and put into words something that makes me feel crazy. Miles is easily triggered. A little bit of airplane turbulence, his vision goes fuzzy. Anything and everything that might remind him of that darkened elevator 15 years prior, suffice it to say, he probably can't handle. And I think Francisca screamed. I think it fell out of her before she could stop it. I think that bullet pulled it out of her. Magnetic. I think she fell to her knees with a gut-wrenching scream, and I think she sounded like her father. And why? Why would I say that when I've just lined up how horrible it is for everyone to see him instead of her? When I've just talked about it like it's so unfair? Because, crucially, no matter how his heart may have seized at this hypothetical scream, Miles did not see Manfred von Karma. Or rather, he did, but
I think they're fully playing bestials at this point, unless they have a way.
Manfred von Karma's steel blue eyes and pinched brow and tight jaw peeking up at him from behind silver sky locks. And
to get Desiree back from here.
Trembling fingers around what was once a perfectly pressed blouse mere seconds before. And he heard that scream fall out of the lungs of a vengeful creature, whispering the name Edgeworth like a curse.
Well, Alpha Thuban is gone.
Saw all of that, and he saw Manfred von Karma.
Our chances of victory are still pretty slim from here.
Shoulders. But none of that actually mattered in the moment, because Miles saw Manfred von Karma.
Wait, how's their second route? Oh, it got shuffled back. Holy shit.
Miles saw Gregory Edgeworth. This moment where Francisca gets shot, forced to take on the exact same wound her father before her did. It is crucial that Miles is here, because to me, this
they don't really need anything else.
The point of
they could probably just beat me down with their bestials.
Becomes her own. And I think it's beautiful that this moment, which should cement her as Manfred von Karma's daughter, heavy-handed symbolism in the form of literal lead weighing her down, is the moment where she finally wrests herself from the weight of his name. Because no matter what Francisca and Manfred
I guess they have the Link one back.
There is one crucial difference between them. Francisca has someone who loves her. That is simply all that is. She is Miles's only family. She is all he has left. And now she is bleeding out on the pavement, just like someone else in his life had. It doesn't matter that she is bitter and angry and hateful toward him, as she rightfully should be, I might add. It doesn't matter that she is at her nastiest, and it doesn't matter that she is
probably shouldn't.
The same wound as the wicked man.
I don't agree with this.
Because
I really
Miles
don't.
Sees Manfred von Karma, and
especially if they were fighting any deck that was way more competent than this.
Then he sees Franziska. All
those two monsters solo.
It all lives on.
They solo. Why are you going into your Fiendsmith ship? You don't need to
act. He fights through what is most certainly a hefty trauma response. The text retelling of this event
I'm crying like a sore loser, I guess.
That Miles Edgeworth bodies Franziska into his car, while she kicks and screams the whole time, presumably because she is fine, and Miles is a foolishly foolish fool. I'm sorry, Miles Edgeworth, is this our gunshot wound? He drags her to the hospital, and she, of course, survives, with little more than a scar in time. And most importantly of all,
what the fuck?
In surgery,
did they just use Desiree from the grave to get Desiree from grave?
Kept the bullet in his shoulder for 15 years.
They have two Desirees?
An everyday reminder of the horrible, disgusting, wretched thing he had done. His cowardice to face his actions and his intent to do everything perfectly and on his own. To be feared by all.
So I need a name.
Few,
it has to be a name. It can't be anything else.
Where it was. He was
if it's the same, yep.
Let a doctor pull it from him.
That's not gonna do it.
And spell his own end. And Miles Edgeworth, age 9, scared
Let's
and breathless,
do game 2.
And sobbing and brave, sent that bullet careening into Manfred's shoulder. And Miles Edgeworth, age 25. Scared and breathless and sobbing and brave, picked his bleeding sister up and pulled a bullet from hers. In a way, that bullet was a tangible piece of the God of Prosecutors' legacy. And it passed not into, but through Franziska. As she's going into surgery, Miles takes the case for her, just as clueless for a good chunk of it as to what Phoenix is going through. I think I want to
go back to Book of Moon rather than Eclipse.
These 2 days of trial
there's really no reason to mass face down monsters.
The situation, of course, is that Phoenix is literally living through a trolley problem. If he saves Maya's life, an innocent person will be sent to jail and executed for a crime we know she did not commit. But if Phoenix fights for the truth to convict the person he knows did the crime, then the person in this world most dear to him will die. So, in the background, Gumshoe, fired from the police force and acting on his own, is hot on the heels of the assassin, intent to track him down and free Maya by brute force if he has to. The name of the game then becomes to stall the trial for as long as possible, with Phoenix and Miles talking each other in circles until the detective can come through for them. Overzealous, though, Gumshoe tears through the streets of LA, running every red light and ignoring every stop sign, rocketing around on sheer determination and stupidity alone.
I need them to drop a bestial.
Eventually crashes his car, and to rub salt in the wound, it's right after he managed to get some crucial evidence from DeKiller that might be their saving grace in court. Gumshoe didn't share his coordinates, though, only speaking with the present attorneys through Phoenix's shitty little Nokia. They quite literally hear him crash, and then the line goes dead. They're left with nothing but the vague memory of what that glimmer of hope looked like as it quickly passed them by. Meanwhile, the stakes are higher than ever, as Maya's been starved and deprived of food and water for over 24 hours now and is barely scraping by. It's only then when Phoenix realizes Franziska had, hilariously enough, planted a tracking device on Gumshoe. When this is initially brought up, it reads like a horrible joke. She literally bugged this man just so she could keep a close eye on him, because he has a tendency to leak information to the defense when he's left to his own devices. It's meant to make us feel even more wary of Franziska because, well, that's an insane fucking thing to do. Now, though, it's their saving grace. Miles calls Franziska. Franziska bolts out of her hospital bed and makes a beeline to where Gumshoe crashed, peeling the evidence off his person and Thankfully, I presume, having enough of a heart to call him an ambulance. Back at trial, the minutes tick down. Only precious seconds remain. Miles and Phoenix have run out of circles to run in, and the judge is demanding that Phoenix declare his plea to the court. The player at this juncture is given the choice themselves. We are allowed to select guilty or not guilty, and we are forced to do this knowing, like Phoenix, that no matter what answer we choose, someone innocent will be sent to their death. So
this is fucked in a lot of ways.
Maybe you flip a coin. Maybe you close your eyes and press buttons at random. Maybe you don't struggle at all. This choice, though, doesn't matter in the end. Because before Phoenix can even get the words out, the courtroom doors are finally open. And in steps Francisco.
How do Castira players always do this?
Injured arm, full of what eventually amounts to decisive evidence. Just in case you're wondering, for a gunshot wound to the shoulder, the average person would probably be looking at 3 to 5 days in the hospital for surgery, recovery, blood transfusions if needed, initial physical therapy assessment, and pain control. 2 to 3 months to full recovery with physical and occupational therapy. Even someone very diligent about getting out of the hospital might be able to do it in 2 days and get back to work at a desk job in about 10 days. But it would still be
sure, why not? This is just desperation now.
And even Manfred von Karma had to disappear for 6 months without medical intervention, just in case someone caught in their sights the slight tremble of his arm when he returned. But, as previously established, Franziska von Karma is fucking built different. Reckless and tenacious, and driven by so much more than spite and the need to win. Franziska fights and fights and fights, and she does not give in. The rest of the trial plays out. Matt Engard is declared guilty. Now, in case you haven't been keeping up, the Von Karma disciples are not the only characters in this series who had these long-standing perfect records. Phoenix had one too. From the moment he passed the bar until now, Phoenix has never lost a case. Once again, I love how the anime does this moment. Remember, this was supposed to be Franziska's case. Moreover, this was supposed to be Franziska's win. This was supposed to be her moment of victory. The moment she finally bested him. Because she knew, and now we all know as well, that Matt Engard was guilty of murder. Not only was Franziska going to best the man who bested her father and Miles, but Franziska was going to be the one to shatter Phoenix's perfect win record. Karma, as it were. So here we are. No, Franziska did not get to be the one standing opposite of him in the courtroom. She did not get to prosecute him into a pile of mere ash. But she got this sliver of what could have been. She got to be the cinching factor, the decisive evidence that locked Engard away, that guaranteed Wright's loss. This is not the moment she
We're gonna go into Fiendsmith from here.
It is her moment, nonetheless. And so, bundled in Gumshoe's jacket with her arms still in its sling, Franziska trains her eyes across the courtroom to watch the foolish, beaten, wounded look.
At least Castira birth is useless here.
Foolish fool face as he finally understands what it feels like to lose. To have everything he worked so hard for crumble to nothing in front of him. And job, Phoenix. Like I said, I am, to this day, astounded at how well the anime did this. That they even had the mind to show it at all. The way Franziska tenses, not understanding what she's seeing. The way Miles looks to her, wordlessly. Because while he was off on his own, he came to understand the truth Franziska has yet to. That in every courtroom war, there is so much more than just who wins and who loses. Franziska isn't ready, though. She simply
this board is unfortunately unbeatable.
That revelation. And so she storms off, disowning Miles and herself from the Von Karma name. 2 failures who couldn't live up to anything they were supposed to. And, crucially, she throws her whip on the floor. Miles lets her go. Until a few hours later at dinner, when the tracking device he'd nicked off Franziska goes off, pinging him to the international airport where Franziska's about to flee, hop on a plane back to Germany, and leave all her failures in America behind. There at the gate, he finds her, and we enter my favorite scene in the whole Ace Attorney canon.
Hey, Nick. I heard something interesting about the Von Karma girl. Apparently, we're both around the same age. You know that?
Nope, that is news to me.
Isn't it remarkable? And I can't believe she went to America to make a name for herself.
Yeah, it takes a special type of person to pull that off.
At this point, I would like to say what I've been holding back from saying this whole time. I would like to give you the layout of the unseen truth of Franziska von Karma's life. The details she refuses to let anyone examine with a fine-tooth comb. What lies beneath the facade of control and composure she wears like armor. I will tell you about what happens at the airport, yes, but before I do that, I need to lay out her whole life for you. So, let's go back. Franziska von Karma lives in her giant house with her papa. It's big. So big, and there never seems to be quite enough to fill it. Allegedly, Manfred has a wife and another older kid, but we see neither hide nor hair of them. And if you're like me, you might be of the interpretation that they are out of the picture pretty early in Franziska's life. It's just her. Her and her papa and their servants and their big, big house. It's great, if not a little lonely sometimes. And then, one day, there is Miles Edgeworth. Now, I want to make it clear, I know that nothing in the canon ever says that Miles lived
by
with
putting
the
Little
Karmas,
Knight
but
back
given
on the
that
deck,
it's a much more
they're
interesting story to me,
letting
and the
Kashtira
fact that the
stay there.
anime,
Not that it
which
matters
Tony
because
helped
of
direct,
birth.
says it outright, it is the interpretation I personally like to follow. So that's the angle I'm coming from here. Franziska von Karma was a toddler when Miles entered her life. This means that, precocious though she was, she probably doesn't remember a life without him. And when I picture Miles at this age, I picture a boy with his eyes dark and downcast, always looking a little waterlogged, voice never above a whisper. I picture a boy who is grieving and traumatized, because that's what we know Miles to be as an adult. Imagine how he was when the wound was fresh. And it is here, right now, that I will propose to the court the key trait that makes Franziska von Karma who she is. If you were to take Franziska and shave her down to one thing, if you peeled away the layers upon layers that collected over the years, ones she chose to put
they
her
were
essence
waiting
in,
for that.
and ones she was forced to, if you simply dug deep down to the center of her heart,
They can't
and
search
mined from
anything
its
anymore
depths,
because it's all in
one
lock.
single untumbled jewel,
At
what
least.
you would find is protection. Franziska is protective. She loves, and she cares, and she has a desire to protect. Franziska wants to protect the people she loves, and even the people she does not love. Miles Edgeworth stumbles into her life. One day, after a long, long time away, her
they have
papa
a beast
finally
deal.
comes home, and this time he has brought her a brother. A brother who is soft-spoken and shy and watery-eyed and reclusive, and Franziska, little though she is, understands. Something has spooked you, she thinks. I'll make sure nothing ever hurts you again. And she takes his hand and does not let go. One of the most distinct things about the relationship between Franziska and Miles is the fact that Franziska, despite being 7 years younger, staunchly insists that Miles is her younger brother. There are plenty of cute, funny, and wholesome interpretations of why she does this. Some propose that it's because she was a Von Karma
There's no need to
beforehand,
keep this
existing
going.
under her father's roof before Miles ever came by. Some people propose that it's a way to declare him her subordinate. After all, Franziska's got a pretty big head and a deep sibling rivalry with him. Personally, I think it's a little more
And I'm really not a fan of giving cards.
Presence is just small.
And like I said,
When
it's
they meet,
unnecessary.
I envision him small and scared.
The cost
and
of giving
it
the
is job
opponent
of a big
cards
sister
is
to look after the little ones who look
outweighed
up
by
to
the
them.
unnecessity
Franziska
of it
certainly believes
all.
Miles can look up to her. After all, he's got a lot to learn about being a Von Karma, and who better to teach him than an expert? Does Miles ever tell Franziska about his trauma? I don't think he spells it out outright. For one, we know that Miles considers DL6 to be a curse of sorts, even going so far as to withhold critical information about it from his literal defense attorney while he's being detained. But I think if he told anyone, he probably told Franziska. Maybe just that something really bad happened to him before he came to live with her, and that something he can never get back was taken. And I don't think Franziska was necessarily born with this drive to be a prosecutor. I think she saw her brother holding back tears in his bedroom one night, talking about how the criminal that ruined his life walked free, and clenched her fists and knit her brow and swore that as long as she walked the earth, no one like the man suspected of killing Miles's father would ever walk free again. In time, we know that Miles began to feel that way too, and I always see people talk about this part of Miles in relation to his career, that he became a prosecutor because he saw himself in the victims of the violence that men do, and he wanted to act, to do something about it. I don't ever hear anyone entertain the possibility that Franziska too might see people she loves. People like Miles, who are small and scared and need someone to shelter them, to lash away the evildoers. So she comes into this purpose, this dream she has of being a lawyer. In time, Miles comes into it too. In the interim, we don't know what happens. Some people
At least I'm not the only one.
Manfred purposefully drove a wedge in between them, encouraged them to compete to an unhealthy degree so that they would not find strength in their love for each other. Others, like me, simply think that wedge formed on its own, not at all helped by his high standards for the both of them, that they were determined to meet. Whatever the case, Miles and Franziska drifted apart, and then
That
one
is
day
the
there
most
was a
unsurprising
literal
face down
ocean
ever.
between them, casting them apart. Franziska, by her own account, felt that Miles abandoned her, that they were side by side, fighting for footing together, and then one day he sped ahead and never looked back. We don't get to see Franziska react to Miles's eventual arrest.
We just need to not get bestialed, and then we win from
The
here.
idea I've stuck with is that Miles didn't tell her, and that word didn't make it to her, because I refuse to believe she wouldn't have flown to America herself to watch everything play out, torn in half, between her love for her father and her love for her brother. No, I think Franziska knew nothing of it until she got the call from Miles, acquitted. And I think that Miles said to Franziska, that horrible thing that happened to me when I was little, it's been solved. That killer who got off scot-free all those years ago, he was a patsy, and the real killer's been found. I finally know what happened. And despite that ocean churning between the two of them, despite the years of bitterness and resentment, the things left unsaid, the big sister in Franziska's heart woke back up. In my mind, I think she got up out of her chair, pacing around the room as she talked to Miles, demanding the name, of course. The name of the monster who ruined her little brother's life. The name of the beast of a human who lurked in the shadows of this sweet boy's nightmares. I think she wanted their name and their holding cell, and I think she wanted their throat pointed skyward and primed for her fangs. And, of course, Miles gave her their name. Where do you go after that? What do you do, knowing the man you shaped your whole world after? The man who carried you from the cradle and protected you, used those same hands to kill. Not only to kill, but to kill in such a tangible way. To kill so close to home that every day, every night, you heard the sobbing of a little boy haunted by the terrors he saw behind his eyelids. The terrors your father put there. What did Franziska do?
We don't know what they're playing.
What could
That's dangerous.
Franziska do? We don't know. All we know is that somehow, despite the pain, she carried on knowing that Manfred von Karma, a man I personally believe she loved more than nearly anything, was a monster. And then, mere months later, her father was dead. Manfred was not on death row for long, at least not compared to other characters like Morgan and Dahlia. We're never told why. I think he killed himself. I don't think the man obsessed with control and power, with dignity and status, would sink so low as to let the state put him down. No, I think he did it himself while he awaited his sentence to be carried out. And I am not a nice person, so I think he did it mere weeks before Miles disappeared. And then alone in Germany, there was
it's
one.
Blue Eyes.
I want to talk about Prosecutor Miles Edgeworth and how he chose death. Namely, I want to talk about how little he is held accountable by both the narrative and the fandom for doing this. When it comes to the Ace Attorney fandom, I notice that people rarely ever talk about this as the horrible, disgusting, traumatic thing it is for Miles to do to his loved ones. I think it speaks to a greater problem the Ace Attorney fandom has with projecting onto Miles so thoroughly that they forget to hold him accountable and examine the nuance in his character. I talked about this in my last video, but I think Miles is a fave for the traumatized or otherwise neurodivergent crowd, and a lot of people who suffer from suicidal ideation probably latched onto him, his canon PTSD, and his guilt complex long before he chose death. And I think for that reason he is really hard to hold accountable for his wrongdoings, especially the ones he does out of a place of trauma. From my observation, it seems that a lot of people in the AA fanbase are young and too, what's the graceful word to use here? Hurt?
Man, Blue Eyes doesn't have any other animations.
To want to think about the fact that wrongdoings
Another reason why I only used the original printed art.
I personally think it's more likely that Miles is choosing death in JFA was meant
Matter of fact, I don't like any variant of Blue Eyes, the normal monster. I think they all look ridiculous.
Leave their former lives without a trace due to a number of cultural factors. But that doesn't change the fact that it works as a very heavy suicide allegory. And in that regard, it is a bit of wish fulfillment for the suicidally idealized crowd. I think that everyone who suffers from suicidal ideation dreams of getting to watch like a ghost at the aftermath of their death, watching people mourn them.
I knew it.
Watching people finally care.
All I had to do was wait.
That is in large part why people do not ever really talk about how cruel and fucked up what Miles did is, because many of them are living a fantasy through him. A fantasy where they die or disappear.
I probably should have just booked of Moon right then and there.
Missed and
I mean, there's no way they're gonna Primite Lordly load a Book of Moon.
I get it, but
seems
reality,
ridiculous.
That is not how suicide works at all.
But well, I mean, they don't have much of a choice here.
Circle and excuse you of yourself because they miss you so bad and you were in so much pain. In reality, they will be thrust into a whirlwind of complex and tangled emotions as they struggle to process the loss of you. It is not pretty. Being suicidal and in that much pain is a horrible thing to go through, and it is also a horrible thing to do to people. And these concepts coexist.
Interesting.
I have attempted more times than I can count. I have also been close to people who attempted. Some survived.
I've never seen anyone use that card before.
That doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, though. What matters is that my response every time was anger. So much so that I could not be there for my friends who survived theirs because I was so furious that they would do something like that to me that I knew being around them would only make the situation worse. I've had to say, I'm sorry you're going through this horrible thing, but I cannot face it right now. Do you have people who can help you through it? Because I cannot be one of those people. Suicide is not a cleanse. It is not a button you can press to make all the pain stop and make everyone suddenly care. The only way you can do that is with courage, perseverance, patience, and yes, a little bit of luck. It sucks.
God, Blue Eyes has way too many support cards.
Not what I came here to say.
They're really holding on to that drill beam.
I think, and how it is whack to me that people defend what he did. It
seems a little ridiculous, but
that Phoenix and Francisca
they won.
Him. As I am now, I don't think I would have. I want to stress, if you're not someone who pays attention to the Ace Attorney timeline, how close together all of these events in Francisca's life are. In December of 2016, her father is arrested on multiple murder charges. Her brother disappears not 3 months later, leaving her with nothing but a note and a shattered heart. Francisca von Karma had everything taken from her in the span of 3 months. And I'd like to remind everyone, at the time of all this happening, she was only 18. Yet still, she remained strong, not a single waver in her steely composure. When we see her in that following summer of 2017, her chin is pointed high, her back straight, her head up. Francisca seems utterly unbothered, and upon first glance, it's so incredibly easy to think that she, despite everything, is okay. things only get worse for her as time goes on. Her win record is destroyed. When her brother comes back, he barely casts her a second glance, lording his own perceived enlightenment over her, and acting as though he was in any way in the right to vanish. A deadly gunman puts a bullet in her shoulder and leaves her with a wound that troubles her even years later. And when she finally gets a taste of what it's like to beat the man who she attributes all of this to, he doesn't even have the decency to be downtrodden about it. Here, at the end of things, what does Franziska have left? Her record is gone. Her right to the Von Karma name is gone. Her whip is gone. She has no control over who she's meant to be, who she wants to be. Every hardship she's endured with tenacity and resolve, kept her heart steady and her mind sharp. Not so much as a waver in her form, not a single tear shed or a moment of weakness. Here, at the end of things, what does Franziska have left? Everything she had control over, she threw away or lost. But, of course, Franziska does not control Miles. This post-credits scene is my favorite scene in the whole Ace Attorney canon. Franziska, after the case, accidentally made off with Gumshoe's coat, tracking device intact. Miles, with the tracker, catches up with her right as she's about to board her flight. Seething and lost, Franziska miraculously stops to hear what he has to say, and Miles asks her if she's running away. Understandably, she snaps at him, and this is the first time in the whole canon we ever see Franziska be visibly upset and vulnerable with anyone. Or at the very least, the first time we see her speak to her own feelings. Much like I've been doing this whole video, nearly everything we know about Franziska we know simply because other characters tell it to us. This is the first time she lets the player, a fly on the wall, into her own head. And she says to Miles, "Do you have any idea what my life is like? Do you have any idea what it is like to only be known for what came before you? To be born with the weight of expectation on your name? Of course you don't, Miles, because you get all the glory of the Von Karma name without the cinder block of it tied to your ankles as you struggle to breach the water's surface. The Von Karma name is like a finely tailored garment to you. You can wear it when you need it and pin it up on your wall when you outgrow its shape. But I cannot do that." And then Franziska, who is a child prodigy, who passed the bar when she was 13, the youngest any lawyer in the AA canon has ever been, says, "My father was a genius, but I have always known that I am not." This single line tells us, without saying much more than that, how blind she is to her own greatness. Franziska tells Miles she hates him, that she has always hated him, that all he has ever done is abandon her, that he abandoned her in Germany, that he abandoned her after her father died. Miles has never given her a second thought. This time, though, she runs first. She's thrown her whip away, she's given up on being a prosecutor, she's given up on being a Von Karma. He cannot abandon her anymore in any way that matters. Miles, of course, brought her whip. He hands it back to her and says something that I will honestly never
Please
stop
don't
thinking
have
about.
triple tactics.
Today, you chased after me. After I'd left you behind all these years. And that's why we're standing here now, side by side.
Miles validates her. Despite how unwilling he's been thus far to acknowledge any of the bad he's done to his loved ones, Miles says, in few words, "I did leave you behind, didn't I? Thank goodness you are who you are, Franziska. Thank goodness you
Still
could
not
have just let me go."
a fan of Natasha being there,
He says
especially
to her,
since,
in his
as
own
usual,
form,
I just keep
"Despite
drawing
all
her
that's
whenever
happened,
she's in the
I
main
remain
deck,
a prosecutor,
and I keep
I intend
bricking.
to prosecute my own way, the way that I came into when I too had fallen
Math
to my lowest.
and
I cannot
probability
decide
does
for you
not care.
what you should do.
The universe
I will
hates
not
me.
be like everyone else.
For
but
playing
if you choose
favorites.
to forfeit this rivalry of ours, this competition we've been running since time immemorial, I cannot quit with you, Francisca. I will keep charging forward and fighting for the truth. Don't you want to come along with me? And Francisca breaks down crying. She shatters unapologetically. This facade, it crumbles into nothing because Francisca von Karma, all this time, she has been a glacier. Every world-shattering note of her life, every turbulent wave against her, it snakes these cracks up the side of glittering, perfect ice, and they build, and they build, and they never break until they do. Until the cracks become too much and the structure cannot hold and the sheets of ice dislodge and cascade catastrophically into the ocean. There in the airport, Francisca falls.
I'm gonna not play around Nibiru.
Ace Attorney does this thing where it has these
I'll
hidden
die on
or
this hill.
one-time sprites. Basically, they are sprites that only show up during one key
I
moment
desire-
in the canon. Sometimes
No,
they are
I
used
require
for
my
humor.
ceiling.
Other times, they're used to really hammer home a scene's emotions as significant and unique. This sprite of Francisca crying is one such instance, only used in this scene and never again. I think that, by far, it is the most effective and most important use of this storytelling device in the whole canon. The angry or mean character is actually deeply emotional, and using anger to keep it at bay is an incredibly common character archetype, but it is so often done in a more shallow manner. Like, they'll just bust out their tragic backstory in the 11th hour and we're supposed to sympathize because, aw, you're sad. But we already know everything there is to know about Francisca pretty much immediately. We know she's a child prodigy. We know she's a genius. We know she's fierce and dedicated and that she loves what she does. And we know that she's lost her father, and we know that she's upset with her brother and wants to see him again. But she does not invite pity because she does not want it. She lays these details out clearly and concisely when they're relevant to what is being discussed. They simply are. She remains as she is, and she fights the same way she always has for what she believes in. Francisca goes through it. We watch her go through it. We watch her lose everything, and then we watch her have to be confronted with the fact that her brother disappeared on her and is utterly remorseless about it for the most part. And then we watch her get shot and kick and scream and fight while she's bleeding out because she wants to go to court. She has to be dragged to the hospital by force. Never once does she back down, and never once does she present anything other than the steely determination and resolve until the very, very end. Until post-credits. She doesn't even crack until after the credits have rolled. And this is most important of all to me. It is kindness that breaks her. It is softness that makes her cry. I feel like to a lot of people, what Miles says to her in this final scene might seem cruel, but it isn't about what he says, it's about what he does. By Francisca's own admission, she has abandonment issues. One of the few single insights we get into her pain is that people tend to discard her and make her feel left behind. When he chose death, Miles decided without the consent of the people who love him.
They have a fucking Rhoda?
He was unbelievable.
What the fuck's the point of having only one Sharvara?
Disappear the way he did.
If this card is
Blinded by this idea
unlimited.
that he is not loved or worth love.
Interesting.
Francisca loves him more than anything, and he did that to her on the tail end of her father's incarceration. She lost both of her favorite people in the span of a few months. Here in the endgame, she intended to give up on everything, and she ran from Miles because, again, if she abandons him first, he cannot abandon her. But nothing Miles says in that scene undermines the fact that he chased after her. He could look her in the eyes and tell her she was scum to him, but the fact of the matter is he followed her. He loved her enough to not be content just letting her give up and run away. He chased after her. Can you imagine what that must have meant to her? He didn't have to chase her, and he didn't have to bring her whip back. And when he said, if you stop being a prosecutor, this is where we part ways, I think we all knew he wasn't being literal. I think we all knew he was full of shit. I think what Miles meant by that is exactly what I said. To light a fire beneath her. To say that he had no intention of stopping, that he would keep on fighting, and that he wanted her to fight alongside him. They've always been rivals, and they've always pushed each other to do better and be better. And Miles knows that rivalry drives Franziska unlike anything else. She doesn't actually want to stop prosecuting. She's just emotionally vulnerable and struggling to cope and throwing a bit of a tantrum about it. And so he pokes at an old button he knows will clear her head. Franziska is a difficult person, but Miles Edgeworth knows her more than any person in the world. He knows how to love her, and he does. He loves her so much. She has been in so much pain. She has seen a lot of wicked words thrown her way, a lot of pushback, a lot of antagonism and banter and bickering, but the one thing no one shows her is kindness and love. Phoenix tries when he brings her flowers in the hospital, but he gets nervous and backs out at the last second. Gumshoe tries, but he does it out of earshot where she can't hear. Every nice thing someone says about Franziska, they say while she's not there to listen. Miles is the only person who looks her in the face and says he loves her. It is love that allows her the space to fall to pieces. It is love that shatters her veneer and turns her into a sobbing mess. She's literally just a little girl who was forced to grow up too fast. She's 18 years old and everything's so hard. She just needed a fucking hug. Franziska, as previously mentioned, will indeed never be her father. She is loved far too much and far too deeply to ever fall so far from grace.
My name? Franziska von Karma.
Really? Like the legendary prosecutor? That von Karma?
Legendary describes the past, but I am bringing us into the future!
When we next see Franziska, it's at the tail end of Game 3. Phoenix is in the hospital, and Miles is, despite his protests, defending in his place. Hoping to keep his identity a secret, they arrange for a judge who won't recognize Miles as a prosecutor. But also needing a proper prosecutor who won't make a fuss, Miles asks Franziska for a favor. They are siblings, so when Miles calls her like, hey, can you fly out to America and pretend you don't know me so we can do a favor for this guy I've had a crush on for 15 years? Franziska's like, that sounds hilarious, of course. A little under a year has passed since the end of JFA. Franziska has notably changed.
Wait, they can still link my DA Draco in it.
That endear me to her. Her short fuse, her ego, her flair for the performance of it all. This trial is important, and because of that, I want to save it for last, and instead talk about the other things I love regarding Franziska here in the final case of the trilogy. First and foremost, I want to talk about what I have avoided talking about thus far. My favorite underrated relationship in all of AA. One that I and a few scattered others in the fandom have christened worsties-in-law. This, of course, refers to Franziska's strange pseudo-friendship with Phoenix. Hearing this, you might be confused, especially if you haven't really thought about the two of them much, or if you skipped out on this last game. But Phoenix and Franziska do have more to them than just initial courtroom enemies, and if you dig a little deeper, I think it becomes abundantly clear. There are hints and whispers toward it in JFA, but it's front and center here in TNT in a way that I love a lot. One thing AA does really well is setting up parallels and narrative foils. For instance, we know that Phoenix is the foil to Miles. Phoenix is bright-eyed, determined, open-hearted, and a bit of a mess of a man. Miles is
Black Rose Dragon is literally such a bad card here.
And incredibly elegant and well put together, at least in court. A lot of people stop there, but don't realize that everyone around them are parallels and foils of their own. Like Mia, for instance, Phoenix's mentor in life and in law. Her direct parallel is Manfred, who is the same thing to Miles. Mia has a younger sister, Maya, who Phoenix forges a deep friendship with, and more or less takes in as family of his own. Opposite to Maya is Franziska, Manfred's daughter, who is similarly precious to Miles. On each side of the courtroom, the dynamics are the same around our two leads. needs. And so when you think of one relationship, if you're aware of that, you'll intuitively start to wonder about its counterpart. One underdeveloped relationship in AA that I see a lot of fan works of is this relationship
It's your turn to
between
get
Maya
triple
and
tactics.
Miles. For one, they have a common interest, tokusatsu shows. Specifically, they're both super into Steel Samurai, a toku show that's consistently brought up and referenced in AA. You'll see a lot of fan art of them marathoning Steel Samurai and crying over it, or attending conventions together, or overall just being absolute fan dorks together. But beyond the more frivolous aspect of their potential friendship, Maya was profoundly affected by the DL6 incident. It's the reason her mother and eventually her sister both left their village, and it changed Maya just about as irreparably as it did Miles. Many fanworks explore them untangling this together, as even though everyone in AA was affected by DL6, Maya is one of the only people who is really on the same level as Miles in just how traumatic it wound up being on her. The inverse to Maya and Miles is, of course, the lesser appreciated Franziska and Phoenix. And it's like, why? What the fuck do they have in common? Well, nothing. Except Miles. They both just love the shit out of Miles Edgeworth, and conversely, he has done a lot of damage.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot Moltarmi resolved. Oops. Well, this sucks.
Pursuit of revenge. She spends the whole
well, we're
game
gonna keep
trying
going.
to crush Phoenix, but
I should have just waited.
To open her eyes to, Phoenix is the only person in the whole world who understands what she's going through. And the thing is, he tries. I think Phoenix knew they were always meant to be friends. While he isn't exactly nice to Franziska, he is abundantly aware of the fact that she is a teenager going through something
don't Nibiru me for my stupidity.
He is not the person who's gonna be there for her and get her through it. But when she gets shot,
An Emperor
he
would
goes to
also
visit her
suck
in the
ass.
hospital despite everything. And I think about this nonstop. He brought her flowers. Phoenix Wright went to a florist, or even just a fucking Trader Joe's, and spent real money on flowers to bring to the nasty, venomous young girl who's been working her ass off to make his life hell. Now, in Game 3, things have had time to settle. In the beginning, Miles is off on his own, but this time, the people who love him know where he is and know he's not going to disappear on them anytime soon. Franziska and Phoenix have both had time to heal a bit, and when they meet up again, Franziska is still Franziska, but every lash of her whip comes with a playful smile, and perhaps her aim is just a little less deadly than before. Phoenix, like Franziska, has a penchant for leaving the hospital when he should not. So even though he's still running an insane fever, he hauls his ass up a mountain to investigate for trial the next day. Franziska declares she will accompany him, and then we get my favorite investigation segment in the whole series. Franziska and Phoenix meander around the crime scene, sharing jokes and quips with one another. One thing a lot of people get wrong in their characterization about Phoenix Wright is that he's a bitch. He's a hater and a cunt. He is sarcastic, pretentious, and
Damn it.
judgy. He'll be the first one to use his abandoned art major to critique the color choices on a painting hanging in some random office, and sometimes when he's bored or annoyed, he'll just start reciting poetry in his head. He has a sarcastic comment for everything. I love this about him, and I always hate when I see him declawed, when I see this part of him ignored or unmentioned. It's not that he's cynical. He is an incredible optimist whose key character trait is his faith in other people, and he loves with his whole heart, but he will grit his teeth and complain the whole time if the pursuit of that faith takes him to annoying places, and it very often does. Franziska especially brings this out of him. The two of them bicker like they've known each other their whole lives. It really is just the epitome of mean lesbian and her pathetic bisexual best friend. In this investigation, it's made especially hilarious because the writers really just upped Franziska's silliness. I feel like a lot of these lines she has zero in on the foreigner aspect, and it's genuinely so fucking funny to hear someone who got like a 400 on their bar exam sit there and talk about how Americans use gravy when they run out of paint. One of my favorite parts of the whole investigation is
you don't have to be destroyed.
Not to go into the garden because it's off limits, and then he walks away, and Franziska's like, "So they're going into the garden, yeah?" And Phoenix is immediately
I
like,
don't understand
There's
why
also
they
this
do
part
that.
where Phoenix calls her by
Just
her
the
full
flex,
name,
I
something
guess.
Franziska does to everyone, and of course she calls him out on it and tells him how impertinent it is. Just hysterical. All around. A very crucial moment in this investigation comes when they manage to find Pearl, who has been missing for a whole night. And Franziska, remember, is protective. Francisca especially is protective of little girls. We see this in Turnabout Reminiscence when she comforts a grieving Kay Faraday, and we see it here when she rushes forward to try and do the same for Pearl. The response she gets is not what she's expecting though. Pearl actively shuns the attempted comfort, instantly turning her claws on Francisca, because Pearl only remembers Francisca as the prosecutor who tried to get Maya thrown in prison, and she's a child, so she's not nice about it either. Pearl goes for Fran's throat. Francisca does not take this well because, as I've laid out, every single thing Pearl says here is true. Francisca is forced to confront the fact that, despite how badly she wants these victims to see her as this knightly hero of justice, there are going to be people who only ever see her as mean. But the most important scene of this investigation to me happens towards its end. Phoenix and Francisca are talking to one of the witnesses, and right in the middle of it, there's an earthquake on the mountain. It rumbles through the temple that they're all resting in, and I do want to make sure to say up front, the first thing Phoenix does is worry about Maya, who at this point is thought to be trapped in the feeble inner temple, which is prone to cave-ins. I'd be remiss if I didn't clarify that she is the first thing on his mind. But as the aftershocks subside, Phoenix locks eyes with Francisca. The two of them do not say a word to one another. They do not have to. Finally, Francisca breaks the silence. Are you worried about Miles? And we come back around. That's it. That's the natural heart of their friendship. The tragedy, again, of Phoenix and Francisca in JFA is that they should have been each other's solace. They should have been there for one another. They were both hurting from the same pain, and they were the only people in the world who had the capability to understand what the other was going through. But they chose to fight instead. More so on Francisca's part, she was not ready to be friends with Phoenix in the wake of all she was going through. There is no universe where they spent JFA being for each other what they needed to be. But this moment in Bridge solidifies it.
Whoa.
Because Francisca looks into Phoenix's eyes at his terrified resolve, and she realizes that someone loves Miles as much as she does. She realizes there are people other than her in Miles's life, and in a way she realizes that is not a bad thing, that there are people looking out for him even when she cannot. She accepts that she cannot. Someone loves Miles enough to feel the earth.
Am I
shift
overestimating
underfoot
Molcharmi?
and think of him before they think of much
Whenever
else,
Molcharmi
just
gets
like her.
activated, I
And she and
fucking
Phoenix
go all
And
sissy
Phoenix
coward baby
sits with her
mode and
brother
just
and keeps him
not.
steady
I
while he
just
beats
stop
himself up for
playing.
things he cannot help. And Francisca goes her own way and does all she can to save Maya because she is good, and she is protective, and she is kind, and she is named Karma. Plenty of folks talk about Francisca's role in the
I've got one
Silverhawks
last
case.
duel
Much
in
like
me.
in JFA, she works in the background, diligently so, to free Maya from where she's chained. It didn't end up being Maya in there, of course, but who it was doesn't really matter in the end. The fact of the matter is that Francisca would have done what she did for anyone, because, as I've said time and time again, Francisca fights for justice. And she fights to protect. That is why it's no shock to me that she stayed up all night, locked in a freezing cold temple, non-stop in her attempts to undo the trick locks hanging on the inner temple door. And by the way, because this is a video about how much I like Francisca and why, I want to take a brief detour to once again highlight how this woman is built different, how her dedication to what she believes in knows no bounds. Hi, so this is editing Wendy.
What the
Since
fuck am I
scripted this
looking at?
video, Nezumi VA made a bunch of Ace Attorney retrospectives, and in her Trials and Tribulations one, she directly referenced the text post that I made, that I am also
Holy
about to reference.
shit.
So if this part of the video seems a little redundant, that's because,
I don't know why
we're
you would
pulling from
tribute.
the same warehouse. But just to clarify, I made the post. I made the post she referenced. And I am now referencing myself. Okay, thank you. Love you. Bye. Okay. So, I did the fucking math, and I can pretty confidently say that over the course of Bridge to the Turnabout, Francisca does not sleep. Now, keep in mind, I'm using the English localization for this. As faulty as it can be, it's kind of all I've got, so think of this within its own bubble. Francisca says that she spent the whole flight reading over the case files. Even with Miles chartering a private jet for her with travel time and fuel stops all accounted for, it is still about 12 to 15 hours from Germany to California. Francisca is very punctual and would likely do everything in her power to show up to court on time, but she's late to the trial by a few minutes, which implies that she just barely made it off of her flight in time to show up and prosecute. So she likely did not sleep on the flight over and then went straight to trial, which was at least 2 hours, but most definitely more. Francisca then stuck around to help investigate that same day, 3 hours later. Her and Phoenix spent the whole rest of the day investigating at Hazakura, and then she went straight from his side to the inner temple to mess with the trick locks. Miles says in-game that she's been out there all night the next morning. And
I know that's rivalry of warlords.
She hasn't slept and has been awake the whole time. Accounting for time zones, she would have left Germany at about 3 a.m. to get to LA by 10, and she probably needed some time to pack her things, so it's likely Miles called her around 1 or 2, which means she definitely didn't get a full night's sleep beforehand either. Calculating all of this, along with the trial the next day while she was still working on the locks, and the fact that she was there after the trial, this means that Francisca von Karma was awake for about 43 hours over the course of Bridge to the Turnabout. Probably more. I really hope she got a nap after that dinner at Trebian. As I said in the beginning of this section, Francisca's reintroduction to the series begins with her and Miles at trial, with Miles donning Phoenix's badge and trying his damnedest to act as a defense attorney. It is not the details of this trial that matter to me, simply the act of the two of them doing this. Because yes, more than anything, it is simply what needs to be done. But more than that, it's just really beautiful. Most people understand without it being explained to them that this is a very special moment for Miles, because once upon a time, being a defense attorney was all he wanted from life. It was a dream that had to be discarded, and ultimately it was not the life he ended up living. But I never see people talk about how important it is that it's him and Francisca specifically here in court together, because the last time an Edgeworth and a Von Karma stood opposing counsel, it ended in murder. It ended in a tragedy so deep that it affected every conceivable character in the whole trilogy. In Bridge, though, it's this collaboration. It's Miles Edgeworth calling in a favor.
It's gonna be a miserable game.
Who is more than delighted to rise to the challenge. It is the presiding judge trying to
scary.
calm down Francisca's fire, and Miles immediately objected to the idea. No, let my sister crack her whip during trial. That's her stim toy. It's important, and it makes her feel powerful. It's them riffing at one another and working together to figure out the details of this case, and to help their friend who is too sick to be there himself. And it's Miles living his childhood dream and getting a chance to see what his life would have been, perhaps, if all that bullshit hadn't happened. But it's also him standing side by side with a person who he only has and loves and gets because it happened. To me, to see the children of DL6 here in court, it feels like a settling. It feels like a storm that's been raging for years has vanished.
They don't know how long I've been waiting for that.
That lasted
Holy shit.
long. Despite the tragedy of what happened all those years ago in that elevator, there is something very beautiful hidden within it all. The universe took Miles's father and gave him a sister, and as if to whisper, "I'm sorry," the cosmos named his sister Karma.
That's the pistol he used to shoot you, isn't it?
No, I knew it was a bad idea to do that, but I had to.
What do you think, Miles? I think I want to be buried with it. That's what I believe, yes.
Bury me with the pistol that failed to kill me.
I kept the bullet safe removed from my shoulder as a sort of memory. Are you fucking kidding me?
Oh,
I was joking! I was joking!
you don't kin Francisca. Francisca kins you.
Yeah. At the beginning of this video, I talked about myself in relation to Francisca von Karma.
Why couldn't they deal damage? Seriously?
People saw so much of us in one another that they couldn't contain it, that they had to tell me. Now I'd like to speak on that and why it means so much to me. This part of the video is not analysis on Francisca's character as much
Right,
as
rivalry doesn't matter
talking
anymore
about
since
what she
everything we summon from
personally
here
needs
on
to
is
see.
the machine.
If you don't feel like listening to my personal musings, feel free to skip ahead, but do know that I can see you skipping and I will be under your bed tonight. So I am autistic, if the length and level of microanalysis in this video didn't make it abundantly clear. My identity as an autistic person is obviously a crucial part of who I am, but it's also not something I let myself feel particularly alienated about. I'm very lucky to have been blessed with a natural charisma of sorts. Growing up and now, I have always been weird and strange and off-putting, and I got bullied like every other autistic
There he
person,
is,
but
let's
in
go!
with that, I had enough love and friendship in my life that it's never really troubled me. I've always been able to internalize the people who other me are the ones in the wrong, not myself for simply being fucking weird. No, I've never felt wrong or bad for being autistic, but I have felt a certain disconnect, not only from a good amount of other autistic people, but also from autistic characters and characters who are coded as autistic. What do I mean by that? Well, I want to say up front that I am not just a woman. My gender is a writhing magenta mass of tentacles some days, and on other days it's got a sword in its hand. I identify as a sort of woman, but the sort of woman who wants to be called they and sir while still being someone's girlfriend and wife. In time, I've just come to say that my gender and sexuality are the same. I'm a
My
voice
bad
lesbian.
for calling you she.
Occasional femme drag. Autistic coded women in media. Well, they're lovely because autistic women are lovely, but I only ever seem to see one type of autistic woman. I think two of the immediate examples that jump to mind are Mabel Pines and Lilo Pelikai. You'll notice that they're both young girls, and that's because I really can't find a lot of examples of autistic women in media, only kids. Because people seem to have this idea about autistics that we simply cease to exist after childhood. These girls, of course, are wonderful. They're bright and beautiful and peppy and strange and cute. Their brains are off kilter in all the best possible ways that I'm sure people who think like them can relate to and are delighted to have someone who they can relate to. I love to watch my fellow autistic girls and women see themselves or their younger days in characters like this. Weird little girls who are loud and unapologetic, and most crucially of all, who have people who love them. But that is not me. For me, autism looks like this. I am a savant about the things that my brain latches onto, with such an intimidating intensity that people have said I make having a special interest feel like a competition. When I speak, my enunciation is formal, unusual, like I'm reading it aloud to a crowd, hanging on my every word, and like I came from a time period different from this modern day. As a child, I often got the "in English please" from not only kids my age, but adults as well. I am a victim of a very common problem in autistic adults: overwork as a form of self-harm. The idea is, when we're younger, we tend to feel kind of useless for all the ways we can't keep up with our peers. But then we grow up, get a job that is great for the autistic brain, like factory work where you can just sort things all day, or distribution where you can sit in a warehouse and listen to a podcast and just put stuff in boxes without thinking all day. For me, this was retail, electronics and video games to be exact. Organizing shelves and back rooms, info dumping about Nintendo games to curious parents, and most of all, being a phone tech, solving complex problems for people with tangible results. Naturally, we excel at these jobs, and if our workplace is any good, we get praised for that excellence. For the first time in our lives, we're not just good
I
at
just
something,
realized none of these are
but
special summoned, aren't they?
extraordinary. That praise becomes addictive. The work becomes addictive. The inertia itself.
That's non-targeting?
So we go and go and go and go and do not stop, even when we should. At one point, I had 80 hours of PTO at my work and over 120 hours of unused paid sick time. Autistics do not want to be told that this is a way we slowly kill ourselves, but most of the time, we need to be told.
I think I get what's happening.
I'm mean. Well, that's not true. I'm not mean. I know I'm not mean, but here is what I am. I am loud about my boundaries. I am direct with my feelings. I am blunt with people because people deserve to be spoken to in a way that is easy to parse. They do not deserve mind games. I am passionate about what I love. I am fierce in protecting that which is important to me. I am bold and confident, and I love myself and I love others. And this love is loud. And I do have a short temper because when you are all these things, people think they can paint you as mean. People are jealous. Insecure people do not like to see me living the life I am living. They are upset that they do not personally feel they can be anything like me. They can. And they turn that rage on me, and they call me things like selfish and cold and mean. Some people on my primary social media site of choice at one point decided I am a literal abuser based solely on the tone of voice I use and how they personally internalize it. People have decided I am mean for speaking too much. People have decided I am mean for speaking too little. When I say I am mean, I am saying it as an act of reclamation. I'm not actually saying I believe I am mean. I'm not declaring to the world that I will step on them. I'm literally taking the words that have been used against me and wearing them as armor. Whatever. Fine. Call me mean for the way I love myself just as fiercely as I love others. If that makes me mean, then I'm fucking mean. Die mad about it. Now, because of this specifically, my identity as an autistic woman crosses over with my identity as a lesbian. I never feel it more than in this specific regard. Mean lesbians are a staple of the queer community. We are, in essence, a bunch of pissed off
Are you
dicks who
now?
are constantly referred to as mean because when you don't perform for men, the motherfuckers who control everything, how the fuck is anyone else gonna convince you to lay down and perform for them? This also goes for autistic people who refuse to perform for allistics and all of the weird social cues they made up. I am great at reading social cues, but a lot of the time I just ignore them because I think 95% of them are the stupidest
Why
shit
can I
in the
not go
entire
into the
world.
battle
We're
phase?
not mean. We're fucking untethered. We do not have the patience for anything that would disrespect us. That is what it means to be
Bruh.
mean. That is why you meet so many mean lesbians. That is why you meet so many mean autistics. We have to learn self-respect from a young age. It's a huge part of what it means to grow up under either of these umbrellas. But if you actually dig a little deeper into this reclamation of meanness and into these mean women, you'll very clearly find that they're hearths just as much as they're wildfires. You would know that they love fiercely and boldly and passionately, and you would know that they'd protect you and fight for you the
motherfucker.
same way they do for themselves. I'm so sick and fucking tired of people refusing to love mean women all the way through. Like, I'm just tired of us being here for the queen step on me aesthetic and nothing more. None of the men or women who get online and post shit like, oh my god, queen, step on me all day would ever talk to one of us, let alone choose to love us. I know this from firsthand experience. If you meet a woman who self-identifies as mean, I can guarantee you the fucking world has kicked her and spit on her and turned its goddamn back on her, and she turned into something bright and beautiful anyways. And I can't imagine what kind of fucked up shit for brains would see that and take it for granted and turn their back on her too. But I know firsthand that not everyone feels the same as me. I know that there are just some people who are not going to love us all the way through. In a way, it's kind of hilarious how I did the same thing to Francisca. Because Francisca is the only time I've ever felt truly represented by an autistic-coded character. Obviously, I'm sure she was not written to be autistic, but she shares so many of my autistic traits that it's almost hard to list them without feeling like my heart is going to spill over and drown me where it beats in my chest. Francisca is blunt. Literally, it's her name. Her name is a feminine version of Frank, which means blunt. With a special interest like law, it's no wonder that she rose to
Did
the
they
top
play
of her
Nibiru?
class and passed the bar so early. That's just how autistic people are. I love that she's a workaholic.
Fuck
I
it,
love
I'm
that
going
she'll stay
to
up for
not
2
give a
days
shit
straight
about
on
that
the case or
Mulcharmy
go to
and
court with
play.
a fresh bullet wound, because even if it isn't healthy, it makes me feel less crazy and alone. And I love that she takes what she wants and chases after what's dear to her. And I love her strong sense of justice and incredible amount of compassion to protect. I love that sometimes she gets so emotional she can't really keep that cool air about her. And I love that everyone thinks she's intense and mean and has her shit together, when in reality she's just kind of a scared little girl. Most of all, I love that she's beautiful. Why are autistic women never allowed to be hot? Why do I never see
What?
autistic women who look like me in heels and waistcoats, dolled up in red lipstick, or dressed slutty for a night on the town? Where are the slutty autistics? Besides in my house. I love that she's obsessively punctual. I love that she doesn't care what anyone thinks about her. And you know what? I've never had a stim toy that changed my life as much as my whip has. No matter what kind of day I'm having, all I have to do is come home and crack that thing for 30 minutes straight. What was I upset about? I don't fucking remember.
Sorry, I was stimming.
An autistic lawyer is honestly a genius fucking concept. Of course autistic people make great lawyers. Court has rules. Court has scripts. There's a very clear way to do things in court with a little variation on the procedure. It plays to the over-analytical autistic mind, building a case and presenting it. And this is most apparent when Franziska and Miles, too, step outside of court. They are social wrecks. They cannot talk to anyone in a way that is even slightly normal. It's like all their competence goes out the window and you're left with these socially stilted weirdos just staring into space and not making eye contact. Court is easy. It's always the same. Small talk is unpredictable, and furthermore, it's unnecessary. I don't want to talk about the weather. I want to talk about how last night I stayed up 3 hours past my bedtime scripting a 20,000 word YouTube video where I talk at length about some German bitch who isn't real. Every trait Franziska has, I see myself in, and it's so weird to think that once upon a time I refused to. She is difficult and brutally honest and rigid and a perfectionist, and she is competitive and hot-headed despite her coldness, and arrogant and stubborn, and all it really amounts to is passion. Franziska cares. She cares so much about so many things. The love I feel is not gentle and slow. When I love something, I feel like every nerve I have is on fire. Like I need to run, like I need to move my hands. It's maddening, really, but it's beautiful to be moved. Simply because there is so much in the world worth moving toward.
I'm Franziska von Karma. Don't fool yourself. You hear me,
Oh.
Miles? I won't walk in your shadow forever. Our fight's just begun. I'm stronger than you.
Do you guys want to know something hilarious? Franziska is not my favorite Ace Attorney character, or my second favorite, or my third favorite. No, Franziska's number 4, actually, but I do think she might be the best character in the series. At the very least in the OG trilogy. The balls that it must have taken to write a character like her back in 2002, to introduce this legendary video game villain and then turn around a year later and be like, oh, by the way, his daughter is here now and she's a million times more cool than him. They could have just made her nothing but that. The daughter of Manfred von Karma, nasty and whip-wielding and a thorn in Phoenix's side. They could have made her someone who was indifferent to Miles, or viewed him with scorn, this shiny new golden child that her father might have liked more than her. But they didn't. They chose to make Franziska mean and nasty, and they chose to also make her fiercely protective and kind. They chose to make her domineering and competent, and they also chose to peel back the curtain and let us know in little bursts that she's also just a scared young girl, trying not to crumble under the weight of her family name. Sometimes I wonder how different my life would be if I had known that the women in Ace Attorney would end up being some of the best female characters I've ever seen in fiction. To this day, it shocks me that I was just out
Fuck
there,
it, I want one more.
blissfully unaware, thinking it was about these two
Nice.
making goo-goo
Finally wanna
across the divide of
rock,
the
paper,
courtroom.
scissors game.
It's so weird to think that Franziska was just out there, undiscovered, waiting for me. So I think that about wraps it all up. In this video, I've said every conceivable thing I could think to say about why I think Franziska is way more incredible than people give her credit for. I hope that if you're someone who disliked her or felt neutral on her, maybe I could at least make you see things with a little more clarity, or at the very least think about her a little deeper. I know that a lot of the time when I'm talking about her and really laying things out like this, people say to me that they never really put into perspective her life and her place in the story. So ideally this video works as a sort of frame of reference to really zoom in and dwell on what might otherwise seem like a depthless character. I think everyone has someone in Ace Attorney who really speaks to their soul, and though she might not be the character I think the most about, she is certainly mine. Here in the end credits, I want to formally thank all the artists who allowed me the use of their art for this video. Chief among them is Cryptid with a Copic collection, who I really think should be lauded as master of the universe for the amount of art she's drawn me, not only for this project, but just in general. She's illustrated a lot of my Ace Attorney fanfiction, and everything she made for this video was generously provided without commission, just out of sheer kindness and collaboration. So if I can rally the viewers here to do anything, I would implore you most most of all to go follow her on Tumblr and check her stuff out. There are links to her art and everyone else's in the description. As mentioned in my last video, I don't do YouTube professionally or consistently, but I do occasionally get overcome with the feminine urge to spurg out in long-form video formats. If you feel like subscribing, go ahead and hit it and leave this video a comment or a like if you're feeling fun and sexy. I was not expecting my last video to be so well received, especially when the subject matter was so wholly controversial, but everyone was really fucking nice to me, and that is very motivating. So maybe I'll keep doing this as long as y'all like it. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. Let me know if I changed yours. I really like reading your comments, and I read literally every single one of them. Like, I read all of them. Feel free to hit me up on Tumblr if you're using it in 2024. Many of my words in this video were actually directly lifted from meta posts that I have written about Ace Attorney over the years. So if you enjoy hearing my thoughts, that is a great way to microdose.
Oh, was that?
Otherwise, I will catch you on the flip side. I don't know how to end videos. Thanks again for watching. Peace.
Pressure like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop. Oh, pressure little tip, tip, tip till you just go pop. Oh, oh, oh. Give it to your sister, it doesn't hurt, and see if she can handle every family burden. Watch as she buckles and bends but never breaks. No mistakes, just pressure like a grip, 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 but it won't let go.
I need follow-up. Guaranteed follow-up. Which Diviner will not do for us. So, fuck it. I'm adding Ruin. No way. No way. Please. Okay. What? Okay, that's a little ridiculous. Not what I was expecting. We know they have one of my Drytron Gamma L Tannins. What the fuck? No way! Ain't no way! Ain't no way. Ain't no way they're using this variant. Ain't no way. Okay. I can do this. We can do this. If we book the Cyber Angel Natasha, we'll be fine. Let's go. Yeah, let's just take those out. Those aren't safe against this guy. This matchup is just downright hilarious. They probably are just gonna go for Vanity's Ruler here. I wouldn't fault them for it. Drytron is ridiculously good at beating itself. At least everything they negate also destroys, so we can Cyber Emergency. Because we have two of it. Playing around Nibiru as well. Very nice. Oh, they're all in on it. This guy's living the heyday. What are they gonna do with Benton? There's no Beatrice. I don't understand, but I'm interested in what they're cooking. At the very least, my day gets to end good. Because I've got a fellow Drytron player. If it is Herald of Ultimateness, so they can summon it again? What the hell is this crazy combo line I'm watching? They're playing the Ursatron. I still find it hilarious that Drytron and Ursatron are supposed to pair with each other. Can you imagine? This card's ability to reduce levels is supposed to be conducive to the negative synchro summon gimmick that archetype has. But like, why would you play any Ursatron cards except for this thing? When you can just fucking play pure Drytron. Without the stupid other bear robot synchro bitches. Holy shit, what the fuck is going on? What? That can't be it. No orange light, no green light, and if they had a purple light, they're gonna be disappointed. Severely. Unfortunately. I have an idea too hilarious not to try. We'll be forgoing our battle phase if we do this, but I don't see why that would be an issue here. I mean, they do have quite a lot of cards on their graveyard. Oh. I'm sure they just had some bad luck. Anyway, that was satisfactory. Those were some good games. We're finally meeting some tougher opponents. Apart from that last one, but again, they definitely most likely just were really down on their luck at that round. Man, I still have stuff to do, but I wanna just fucking go to bed.